So this is a presentation on characteristics of culturally responsive teaching, specifically communication of high expectations. My intended audience is K-12 educators. That can include certified staff and non-certified staff working with culturally diverse populations. I'm going to start with talking a little bit about the 8 competencies for culturally responsive teaching. I've included a graphic you can take a peek at. But communication is a big one in there as well. And it's been shown that culturally responsive teaching, along with proactive behavior management, has been observed to promote positive student behaviors in the classroom, along with having curriculum that's relevant to students and teacher communication, like using humor and providing direct commands, contributes to less exclusionary discipline practices, which definitely addresses the equity issues that we have, not treating all of the students equally but equitably for what they need and for what they were raised with, being sensitive to their differences in learning styles as well. Communication of high expectations, consistent messages from teacher and school that students will succeed based on respect for students and belief in their capability. Having high expectations influence teacher-student relationships and make high impact on student performance, motivation, and self-concept. Positive measures from the teacher and school reflect effective teaching in a multicultural society, and teacher communicates belief that learning is serious with rewards and demands. So really believing in all of the students and working with their different backgrounds and things becomes very important when addressing the cultural differences. It can make a huge difference treating certain students may blurt out. Well, that's not really necessarily a bad thing. That might be how their culture does it, and we have to kind of, I guess, change with the times here and understand that they're not necessarily being rude. They're just participating in the way that they know how. Also, students are apprenticed into a learning community rather than taught isolated and unrelated skills. This just means you include them in the community for learning and make sure that things are relevant to them and they're really going to thrive. You always treat them as if they already know something, so really having those conversations in class helps to make sure that they're involved in it and engaged. Teaching students to think through wrong answers and work together to think of better answers, basically making thinkers versus just having students memorize things. The rote way is really a thing of the past. And students treated as competent are likely to demonstrate competence. So just believing in them and always telling them that, they've got this, and that will really help. A relationship to the broader educational content. I've put culturally responsive teaching where bringing native language into the classroom is important, understanding history and culture of the families and the students. Having family involvement is huge. If you can get them on board with what you're doing, you're going to be a lot more successful. Community culture into the classroom as well, like really pulling some of those things in for the students that they're used to in their own cultures. And I found this graphic online in another slide show, but somebody had put a no secrets classroom. So really communicating the high expectations is great, but it needs to be a no secret classroom. Like everything needs to be talked about and worked together. So you have procedures in the classroom, and if you take a peek at the graphic, it says define and teach classroom routines. Well, doing that with the students is hugely important into getting their expectations known. How to enter class and begin work. When you address all of these little things in this list, you really cut down on behaviors and things. And then if a behavior does pop up, you know it's due to something different, something within the child, versus not knowing what to do, because a lot of times behaviors come from just feeling uncomfortable, not knowing, as the list says, what do you do if you don't have materials? Well, if you have them out on the counter or in a bin and they know where to get them, and they don't have anxiety over what to do and they won't act up. What do you do if you need help? Set into place the rules about ask a friend or ask the teacher or whatever they need to do. What do you need to do if you go to the need to go to the bathroom? All of these things, the how and meeting expectations is huge. So communicating those things and going over them regularly and making sure that the students are comfortable creates a safe classroom environment where everybody can be comfortable. Effects on teaching and learning and implementation. So when you have positive measures from the teacher and school reflect effective teaching in a multicultural society, and teachers understand student behaviors based on norms of the communities they are raised, and teachers respect all students as learners with knowledge and experience of their own. When all of these things are in place, teachers are calling on students often. I mean, that is important to include them in the discussions and in the lessons. Giving ample feedback, giving them immediate feedback is also very important. When teachers are praising student responses, they're really getting them involved and making them feel like they do know a lot, and they rise up from that and want to know more and want to learn more. Schools are detracking and offering challenging curriculum and providing intensive time on task. So really focusing on making sure there's time for all of the necessary lessons. Challenges for educators. I've included a graphic here as well. Limited access to knowledge of cross-cultural awareness and communication, difficulty in building relationships and trust with children and parents, different expectations from parents regarding learning, separation, parent roles within the center, approaching learning from their own perspective or a teacher's own perspective, might unwittingly make assumptions or use stereotypes, and limited access to use of translators. And that goes into, the diversity as well. When you have ELL students, that can really be a barrier. Challenges for students. Classroom interactions may differ from experiences at home. Many students learning to do school are learning communication and interaction structures that they're not familiar with. So when you're trying to communicate high expectations, you have to make sure that you're also being aware of the students' differences and how you're going to help them get through and kind of develop a norm at school while being sensitive to their own learning styles. Behavioral expectations may differ from home to school. Working individually in large groups and small groups may be new experiences to them. And having a teacher tell them what to do may be different from cultures who learn, say, through observation, reflection, and direct experiences. Some extra challenges here. Teacher and student expectations can be influenced by culture and affect interactions in the classroom. Social etiquette across cultures varies and can hinder participation for some students, like I had said before. Quality interactions can be affected when teachers do not understand the cultural norms of their students. So that comes into play where you have that student, bursting out answers, and you spend more time disciplining them than you do teaching them. So you have to really know and understand your students. Some recommendations. Students are required to show their work and explain their processes to others, really getting them involved with being thinkers. Students frame relevant questions and help determine appropriate tasks and sequence. Students are trained to make their own choices and express themselves in an environment of academic discourse, which is, I had to look that up. Academic discourse, meaning using the appropriate academic language. Like, that is something that we need to teach them, and starts with background knowledge and really having those good conversations and calling on students and making sure that they're comfortable with the materials that you're going over. Teachers identify explicit goals for classroom management to help prevent or at least minimize disruptions. And this goes back to, communicating those very high expectations. It can help in reductions in conflict. But the teacher needs to have positive relationships with the student. Look at teacher role in conflict. It's not always the student's fault. It might be how we're reacting to it. Realize the way you treat your students influences their response to you. So if you yell, certain students don't respond to that or may shut down. So you really need to look at your own part here. Get to know the students and look at misbehavior and diverse cultural codes of etiquette, communication styles, and responses to conflict. Different cultures definitely respond differently. Don't over-personalize students' misbehavior. It's not always because of what we've done. It could be the students having a bad day. Get to the root of that. Treat all students equitably, not equally. I've said this more than once. Tell students why behaviors are treated differently. I was leery to do that, but upon the research that I've been doing, that is important. It's okay for students to hear that, so-and-so needs to sit at the table during our discussion because that's okay. It's just teaching them that differences are okay, and sometimes we need something different than somebody else. So I did find these couple extra resources while I was doing some research. Culturally Responsive Teaching, a reflection guide. I don't know if that's in paper form, but the online version was pretty good and had a lot of questions to ask yourself while you're trying to make sure that you're including cultural diversity in your lessons and things. It was really good. And Who's in My Classroom? That was available just on Amazon. That's the only place I could find it, in paper or online. But a really good book to get to know how to figure out the differences in the students. It really gave a lot of ways, I think, in the little bit that I looked at, on how we can get to know our students better. And then I've included a reference page. I've made this all just for you to listen to, and you can go back and peek at the slides for visuals and to look at, where you could find more information. But I think it's important as educators, we're very busy, and it's nice to be able to just listen to some tips and tricks. So hopefully this will help you. Thank you.